Good afternoon once again. Welcome to the fourth webinar under our Digital Transformation webinar series. My name is Shivani Sinarayan and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon. It is 4 p.m. Belize time, 5 p.m. Jamaican time, and 6 p.m. Trinidad time. Welcome again. A very interesting conversation we're going to have this afternoon. A wonderful panel, a very exciting panel we have here today, who will contribute, bring lots to the conversation on circular economies. So this is how we are going to move forward with our conversation, the circular economy. And what do we as property managers, facilities managers, maintenance managers, once we're in the field, we are management of buildings, how can we contribute to the circular economy? So welcome again. The circular economy. And I want to start with this very interesting question. How can society rethink progress? How can society rethink progress with a circular economy? Next. Living systems will be around for a few billion years. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species waste is another food, energy provided by the sun. Things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we have adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. And of course, we're going to hear lots about this from our panel. We take, we make, and we dispose. Next. And I'm sure we all understand that. We take, we make, we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another one. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. Next. So, what can we accept that living world cyclical model works? Can we change our way of thinking so to operate the circular economy? And that's what we have to keep wondering. Can we move from a linear economy to the circular economy, which is zero waste? Could we stop taking, making, and disposing? Next. Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components and the packaging they come in. We can create safe materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources has been lost in the making of this material. Next. So what about making washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. I wonder, what if the goods of today become the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead to throw away and replace culture, we become used to adopt a return and renew, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. And this is how the conversation will go. How can we move from linear to circular, where we could return the products that we have and renew it and reuse it? Can we do that? Is that our mindset? And of course, the panel will bring lots to the conversation with this. You may be asking yourself, how could we do that? How could we redesign and how could we rethink our processes from a linear economy to a circular economy with zero waste? One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we can design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increase agricultural value, and imagine that these products are made. Rethink. Here, we have a model that builds prosperity, long-term, and the good news. Are there already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working? But the circular economy isn't one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open a new perspective and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustration of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future. This is what we want to do. We want to move from a linear economy to a circular economy. Can we do it? So let me introduce the panel that will bring forward this conversation, different things that we can do. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Wesley George. Wesley George is a general manager of communication, sales, and marketing at Swimcall. He has over 15 years of experience in management and sales. Currently, he's acting as a general manager, communication, sales, and marketing. He has held substantive posts of business development manager for the last 4 years also at Swimcall. Professional qualifications, MBA from Arthur Lockjack, BSc, University of London, and PMP certified. Wesley is indeed a project management professional who will contribute a lot in the different types of projects that Swimcall is embarking on for waste management. So we look forward to hearing from Wesley. Also, joining me in this conversation is Aisha Clark Roach, General Manager of Operations at Swimcall. In this role, Aisha is responsible for the operations at the 3 major landfills in Trinidad, as well as the operations of the company's recovery and recycling programs, facilities, and commercial operations in both Trinidad and Tobago. Aisha also acted as the CEO of Swimcall from May 2019 to October 2019. Aisha has received a Bachelor of Engineering in Civil with Environmental Engineering in 2009 from Montreal, Canada. She worked with Pure as a civil engineer. In 2015, Aisha has completed a Master's of Science in Civil and Environmental Engineering. Aisha is also a PMP, Project Management Professional, and like Wesley, she will be bringing forward to the conversation a lot of the special projects that Swimcall is embarking on. Please join me in welcoming this panel, Wesley and Aisha. Thank you, Wesley. Thank you, Aisha, for joining us in this conversation.
Welcome.
So, Wesley, Aisha, I know when I asked you all, so what do you do in your spare time, when you have a little downtime? And you both told me that you seek more knowledge in waste management. So that's I think that's a good hobby, how you will contribute to this conversation so much more, all the different knowledge that you're seeking in waste management. So Wesley, I know you will take this first question. This is something that I myself and a lot of us in the industry, we think about a lot. We have responsibilities of improving recycling strategies to reduce the overall energy consumption of a building. We have to reduce the waste by our facilities. It should be top on our priorities. But the question is, really, is it? Huh? And you'll bring forward to the conversation many different reasons why it may be and how we could really improve and to ensure that this is now top of our game. That where we think when we are managing facilities and our properties and maintenance, how do we reduce waste? So I want to bring you into this conversation really by asking you, Wesley, what are the different waste streams? What are different waste streams would you see?
Right. Well, good night, Shivani, Aisha, all the those present online with us. So, what are the waste streams that you look at? So, when it comes to recycling and waste management, um, you're speaking about four major waste streams, right? They fall into four major buckets, and those are plastics, looking at paper, looking at your organics, right? Organics are, the biggest portion of it most times, and organics can be further broken down into wet or dry, right? Wet meaning your food waste cooked. Is it cooked? Is it uncooked? Organic is a very complicated a grouping, a very broad grouping by itself, and then you get into glass, and then you get into so those are the four major buckets you need to treat with, and then you get into smaller sectors of the waste profile, such as e-waste, and so on, right? So when first approaching and seeking to understand, and well, I think we will get into it a bit as the conversation go on, is important that one understands the nature of your waste profile, right? What currently my current waste output, what is it, what are the major contributors to it, and seeing that we're bringing all of this back into facilities management, and ideally the real driver here is cost, right? Cost to maintain your building, and reducing cost or optimizing spend. You have to first understand, one, what is your baseline, right? And then what is your baseline with respect to your waste profile, right? And these are some of the buckets, the major buckets that you have to look at first in engaging what your starting point is.
Thank you, Wesley. So, Aisha, would we say that the region, would we say that waste is handled? And, we are not looking at the circular economy, of course. It's not in a silo, because we're looking at it throughout the entire region. And I know you will be able to contribute so much to this aspect. Would we say that the region handles waste the same way?
Well, good night, everybody. So, no, I would say the region, different countries in the region handle waste differently. Even in the world, if you want to broaden the base of it, right? Many countries, they have what is called a waste authority. So this gives them the powers and the rights, basically, to address and make decisions and enforce obedience to waste, right? Swimcall is still, Trinidad is still getting there in terms of being able to, have the authority and the powers to basically make the decisions on what happens to the waste, right? Many countries in the region also charges a tipping fee. That means you basically, on entry to the landfill, you pay for the waste you bring in, which is a deterrent, right? Waste in Trinidad is basically free, while some special waste are paid for. the general waste, which is the municipal solid waste that you and I would deposit from our homes, goes into the landfill for free, right? Some in regionals or regions also the collection as well as the disposal is a one full thing. So it's a whole system for collection of the waste and the disposal of waste. In Trinidad, the collection is done by the regional corporations, and Suncol is responsible for the final disposal of the waste, right? Based on even some regionally, because I think Trinidad has lower electric rates and to an extent water rates than certain countries. Barbados, for example, we have, the culture towards waste disposal is a bit, less. We need to adopt a more positive culture to basically recycling, reducing, maybe even going to as far as refusing, reducing and recycling. So we need that culture, which, with a whole circular economy starts off with, an authority setting the standards and continuing and as we go forward, right? In terms of facilities management, incentives for green buildings are not as great in Trinidad, right? Because our, especially electricity bill is one of the, I think is the lowest in the region. We don't have, people are not incentivized to save electricity. They're not incentivized to bring back their plastics because, deposit systems and all these things are part of the culture towards proper how we handle waste in the country.
Thank you, Aisha. And you mentioned a good point there with culture and the cultural issues. So I know we'll bring in Wesley later down into this part, the cultural issues with waste management. Okay. So stay tuned for that, right? So Wesley, we in property management and maintenance management, we want to implement a waste management system, a waste management scheme to contribute to the circular economy, because remember we started the conversation by saying we want to do what? We want to move from a linear economy to a circular economy. And how can we contribute as managers into this? How can we contribute? What action plan? Is this at the top of our, are we thinking about it? And so could you guide us on some practical steps that we can do to reduce waste from our buildings?
Right.
We have all these different types of buildings.
Right. So, well, I'm starting with the assumption that we have an existing building and it's a going concern, and we're not building something new, right? So your infrastructure is already there, your design is already there, you can't do anything about it. What is advised is that first thing you need to know what is your baseline. You need to do and to establish where are you currently with respect to your waste, right? What are the current habits? What makes up the composition, or what is your waste characterization, right? We would usually recommend you do an audit. So there are companies who will come in and do a waste audit, right? That will look at how much persons you have in a room. You'll have to document, how much paper you're putting away. You have to weigh things. It takes depending on the size of the organization. It could be complex. It could be simple, but nevertheless, that is your first step. If you need to do it properly, right? You need to have, you conduct a waste audit. The next. But, I don't want to confuse or disincentivize people when you start talking about audits and that type of thing.
Yeah, let's start with some I think all kind of thing when you're talking about the word audit.
Yeah, that turns people off. But let's start with the low-hanging fruits, right? A simple thing. Just say, well, the bar, stop using a bottled water or single-use beverages bottles in your building. What you find is just by that one, making that one policy decision, you would find that you would have significantly reduced the amount or I should say increased your waste capacity. Why is that? We have found that plastic bottles, because of its voluminous nature, right? That could get up to about 70% of an average company's waste profile, depending on the building. A school might differ from an office building, and that type of thing. But generally speaking, plastics and plastic containers may tend to make up to 70% of the space in your receptacle, right? So by simply seeking to eliminate that from the building at all, or the use of it at all, what you would find is that you've created 70% space. Or if your region has a recycling program that incentivizes the collection, the sorting, the separation or collection of it, what you would have is you can significantly reduce the cost of 70% of your waste by simply adopting a policy of either no plastic bottles or single-use bottles within your organization, um, or implementing a sorting or recycling program that it's commonly called within your organization. A simple step, and you can get a big win there. Other things, then you can start building on that, because what that does is that in order to implement that, you'll have to engage your organization. You'll have to have some kind of training and sensitization. It gets people involved. And these things are already happening in the schools. So the children involved. These things are low-hanging fruits that are easy to get people on board with. But once you get people on board with that, then you can have a conversation with them to take the next step. The next biggest bill you want to deal with, or you can't deal with, is utilities, right? Electricity and water, right? Again, a next one, simply taking lights off when you're leaving the building. Right? People are now used to the whole idea of recycling, and they're excited about that. So now you can tell them, hey, you know what? Step 2, how about just taking off the lights when you're leaving on an evening, right? Again, simple measures that will bring about the large benefits. You're looking at that Pareto rule, 20%, that will give you the 80% type of return. And the harder one, which is wasting of water, right? Again, that is a little more technical, and I think herein is where you may require some investment in terms of sensors, your faucets, that type of thing. Again, different organizations may have to treat with this differently, and then you can get down into more complex things such as organizing your centralized printers. You kind of get into rooftop gardens. Those things are really popular in Asian countries, and that type of rooftop gardens can facilitate composting. So instead of throwing your organics into the bin, persons can collect it and carry it upstairs and that type of thing. And you can when the fruits bear and that kind of thing, you share it up and everybody have a good time. So you can get into that type of thing. You have more expensive things that you could drill up to, which is basically converting all your paper-based activities into more online, online. That sounds great. You can get money. There is a lot of savings there because companies spend a lot of money on paper and stationery. But again, the upfront cost of that, and we will talk a little more about that. I think further down the conversation we'll get to that. The upfront costs to facilitating those things. So these are some low-hanging fruits, so to speak, or I think a more traditional way to approach it. I think sometimes when persons from an organizational perspective, when you hear about these things, you're looking at some grand initiative that some large company did, and they have jerseys and bright lights and that type of thing. But it doesn't necessarily always have to be like that. It's the simple things that you can implement that can go a long way and can bring you immediate returns. Yeah, immediate returns whilst leveraging or changing the culture and the attitude of your workplace or the persons within your workplace towards towards recycling and their own use. Because really what we effectively seeking to change is behavior, is really behavior change, right? And one of the things Aisha said, the reality is that once once we don't, especially I can speak to Trinidad. Part of the problem in Trinidad is that things are so cheap, right? Relatively cheap, but someone pays for it, but not the user, right? So for example, in our general waste, and I'm probably going all over the place here, right? But just to kind of leverage on Aisha's point, that because waste collection at the municipal level is free to the household, right? It's not directly related by our property tax or something like that. In addition to that, right, we have gotten the habit of in persons get garbage collectors 2 to 3 times a week. So it actually facilitates, that type of high generation of waste. What you would find is that actually acts as a high barrier to entry or disincentive to get to change behaviors, right? So that one thing feeds into the next. So it's a whole issue of accountability there that you have to treat with, right? But the reality of the situation is that we are effectively embarking and a recycling program is at the core a behavior change exercise, right? So when developing your programs in your organizations, you have to bear that in mind. You can't just say, well, you know what, recycling, now we're going to buy some bins, going to line, it's going to be great. No, there must be a period of training, a period of sensitizing. There must be disincentives, there must be incentives to go along with it, and accounting and reporting to show persons the benefits to them for engaging in such activity.
Thank you, Wesley. I'm shaking my head because it is such a relevant conversation you have there. And some key points that I just want to emphasize and really build on what you said is the use of training, to train persons. People need to be trained. They need to understand, why am I doing this? We come from, in our environment, we know everybody will say, well, why should I do this? What is the purpose of it for me? Why should I go now and put the bottles in a to be recycled? Why should I do it? So training is a very, very important aspect, as you correctly said, but also you brought forward another point that triggered something in my head. It's behavioral change. How can we change the behavior of somebody? How could we change it? It's only when, another point then from that, people will do this if it benefits them too. What is in it for me, right? What is in it for me? So people may have, when we are doing training and we are trying to implement all these recycling programs, persons have to understand it is a shift in behavior, but why do we do it? Or why should we do it? What is it? Is it, as you said, people should go and turn off the lights? If you spoke about simple steps, but somebody might leave a light on the office and say, but I'm not paying the light bill, right? So why should I do it? So it ties back into behavioral change. And I do believe people can change. I do believe people can change with proper training and understanding what is the purpose of why we do it. To build on your points too, and you started this whole talk actually, Wesley. Yes, you're going to train people, but you bring in part of the conversation. So in our environments, in our organizations, you bring people part of the organizations, part of an ideation session. Then bring in ideas. How could we contribute to it? How could we contribute to it? And everybody wants then to understand what is the end result. Are we going to save? I know also giving rewards and incentives to people. If you use less paper in the organization, people may go forward and come forward and say, yes, all right, I may win the organization giving me a prize then to go to Tobago if I save on paper department. And you are very correct. Paper, we use a lot of paper in our organizations, and probably we need to do more digital, right? Instead of, why should we print everything on a piece of paper? But there are all different types of systems in that now. But very, very good points, Wesley. How could we change the behavior? It's a mindset in how do we save? How can we contribute to this thing? So ideation sessions, training you brought forward, behavioral shift. Keeping in mind, everybody, we are speaking about moving from the linear economy to a circular economy. Zero waste. zero waste? And can we do that? There are so many things that comes part of the conversation. So thank you so much for that, Wesley. And we'll build from this conversation, I'm sure. You also mentioned about the green buildings, and I know Aisha started with this, the green buildings. And it is a concept that we hear a lot of, going green. I mean, it's been around a long time now. However, there's a cost involved. What is this green buildings? And, we speak about the LEED certification and going green and having your buildings going green, and you get points for your buildings. Not all in the region we do it, but it is something that is there, going green. And there are certain councils and stuff in Trinidad and Tobago that promote something like this. So Aisha, why would we then want to speak about our buildings, the green building, and how can that contribute to waste? What's the purpose of it? And sustainability, I should say.
Right. So just to iterate, one of the major things on what is a green building is creating a structure using the processes that are environmentally responsible and resource efficient in all stages. And we mean all stages from siting to design to construction to operation and to maintenance, etc. Right? Going green, I mean, why we don't want to whitewash the face, it's where we have to go, right? Because we don't want to keep using we do have a limit on our resources, our natural resources. I believe most of the rhetoric right now is about, trying to save our natural resources, prevent climate change and these kind of things, right? So with these green buildings, it reduces consumption. So consumption in energy, which is electric, heating, and cooling. We don't have heating in Trinidad, but we do have a lot of cooling, especially these days with the high temperatures that we've been having, right? Water, materials, and natural resources. So you use natural resources as opposed to light. You situate the building a bit better to get more natural light as opposed to having to use lights everywhere in the building, right? We have to reduce the effects on the environment, which is the waste. As Wesley was rightfully saying, we have to start looking at how we can reduce the waste in the building, reduce pollution, especially for the water and the air, reduction in the heat, the runoff, and the noise of the building. Right? Some of the major savings that you can have is, as he rightfully said earlier, is once you have that culture shift, you could look at saving with your electricity bill. Something simple as putting sensors or basically being a smart building. Even in your house, a smart house, sensors and automatic light switches that will come on and come off as and when you need it. That could save a lot. Using LED lights could also save, right? Heating and HVAC systems, once they're energy efficient, that can produce a huge cost savings to your building, right? Changing the culture within your building, as he was stating, which is looking at recycling, reducing, going paperless, a ream of paper. If you could save buying 100 reams of papers a month, to go down to maybe 2 reams of papers a month can be a significant savings depending on the size of your building. So it gives less footprint. Political rhetoric aside, one of the major things is the new LED bulbs that they're giving out to households. So this is more on a household level. If you just do the calculation, incandescent bulb, which is the old school method, one bulb maybe running for about 6 hours a day is about, you pay about $6 a month in your electricity bill. If you use the CFL bulb, which is the compact fluorescent bulb, that could be, you can have a cost, well, at least this is for Trinidad rates, you can have a cost of $1.15 per CFL bulb for an average time frame of 6 hours a day. But if you use the LED bulb, you can go down to as much as 86 cents a month per CFL bulb. And these are calculations that, just using our current electricity rates, right? Now, if you look at it over a time frame, cost savings for like average LED bulb could give you, let's say, 2,500 hours. If you look at the regular incandescent bulb, that's 900. For that same period, your bill could be approximately $920, as opposed to LED bulb, which could come down to as much as $145 approximately, given average uses and that sort of stuff. So these show if you apply this small model of one bulb to a building, you can save and put sensors for water, sensors for electricity in the night. One of my pet peeves in Port of Spain is seeing, you're driving through Port of Spain in the night and half the public buildings there's electricity, lights are on, and you know nobody is there. But sensors and using less efficient LED lights can decrease your cost savings on can increase your cost savings on a building, right? So these just are some of the tangible ways you can actually save by going green and getting being LEED certified.
Thank you, Aisha. And some very interesting points that you bring forward there in terms of what can we do with our buildings, right, to contribute to the circular economy and to have less waste. So you mentioned going green and simple things that we could do, the different types of light bulbs and what type that we can use and how we could definitely save. You brought some good statistics there. And of course, the building management system that I know we discussed in the previous webinar, actually, with the low touch economy. And it is a very relevant point with the going green concept too. The building management system, a piece of technology that you don't, and what Wesley was speaking about, where you have to have somebody now go and turn off the lights. If you have a building management systems, automatically it can be done, just as in the ACs, etc. So a building management system is a technology that can assist us in the going green and also by eliminating waste and contributing to the circular economies. Of course, that was a whole conversation, and that is a conversation that we'll have to continue with, the building management systems and how relevant and how to do it effectively. How to do it effectively. But of course, if done well, it can work. But Wesley, I did like your point. Your point is, what are some of the simple steps that we can do? Right? Not everything that we could spend money on, but there are simple steps that we can contribute. So we are looking at what can we do without introducing different technologies. But of course, we have technologies, as you said, different sensors where automatically the pipes will turn off. Many times I keep getting phone calls all the time. Well, there's a leak, there's the pipe, all of these different things in facilities management. What can we do to prevent these things and to probably work and contribute better to circular economy without having to go and turn off the pipe? Yes, you may say somebody can just walk and turn it off, but do we have technologies that can automatically do this for us? And especially now, how we are working remotely, how are we going to, what type of buildings or what technologies are we having in our buildings to contribute to this without having somebody physically there? And many of us, we are out of our buildings. We are not, in the offices as much as before. So how do we manage these buildings? How do we manage these buildings without having somebody physically there all the time to report if something goes wrong? So this is something also that can impact waste and to have running water there for weeks and nobody knows about it. So if you probably have different technologies, it can assist this process. So very, very good points. But of course, we'll get more to that conversation with cultural issues. So Wesley, I jump right into your favorite talk now, cultural issues. The cultural issues with waste management. And as you speak about the cultural issues, I know people listening will really enjoy this part too, because I got a little point on it. The economics of the circular economy. We always want to do X, we want to do Y, we want to do Z, and A and B and C and everything too, right? But what about the economics of the circular economy? And it ties in so much into culture, and I know you're going to share. We might be here for 2 hours speaking about culture and economics, because that will take up the whole conversation, Wesley. But don't worry, talk. Let's hear you.
Yeah, Shivani. So I was thinking where I can start it up. I think is a good place to start is sort of defining the two. Culture speaks to how we do things, and you have to look at that both at the macro and the micro level. But what influences that? And I think economy, the real sort of definition of an economy is defining the relationship between the production, between production and the consumption of goods and services by some mechanism of trade, right? So what defines that? Of course, one could say, well, does the culture of the people define the nature of the economy, or is it vice versa? Well, I don't have the answer for that, but what I would ask is to, I think we were discussing it some time ago, and I would ask person to sort of harken back to, I would say, I mean, when I was a boy, how much ever years ago, it was not common for the yard I grew up in, or the house I grew up in. Everyone had some backyard. There was someone there was, when my mother made, after she finished made a meal, or cut up the cuttings, she would take it up and it would go into something. What I know now is a compost heap, right? Out in the yard, and there was a garden, right? Everyone had a garden, and it would even go there. Or if you didn't have a garden, or you had ducks, you had chickens or some kind of thing, and cuttings or the leftovers went into feeding the animals, or into some sort of compost heap. Those animals would mature. We would kill them and we would enjoy them, and same for the plants. Therein, at the micro level of the home, there was a circular economy. We didn't call it that then, but that is what it was. But what drove that? What caused that to happen? One, our parents and grandparents will tell you, one, availability, right? Availability of it. Simply because, one, you did not have the amount of access to goods and services that we had now. The access was an issue. Two, price was an issue, right? Our parents, most of us didn't enjoy the sort of incomes that we are enjoying today. Our disposable income was not as it is today in a lot of cases, right? So in other words, the market was a different marketplace. And because the market was the way it was, it caused persons, or it incentivized a certain type of behavior, right? However, globalization being what it is and having the impact on where they're driving prices down, right? We in Trinidad, or different territories within the Caribbean, we have done well with our own macro economies. We're making more money, creating more disposable incomes, and so on. What you would find is that the behaviors of persons now change simply because we can do more, right? So I think that is a good sort of framework in making that link. That is my personal link between the relationship between culture and economy, unless with respect to the impact on the circular economy and some of the challenges you have in trying to tell someone that explaining to someone the benefits of a circular economy to them. Now, this whole thing about circular economy is a circular economy against what we have, which is a linear economy. Again, what is an economy? The relationship between the products and the consumer, right? So in a linear economy, is a situation where after it is consumed, it is disposed, right? It's end of use, there is no value, and it heads towards the landfill. It comes to Aisha's landfill, and they spend a lot of money, millions, to deal with that, right? She's smiling. Insane millions of dollars to deal with that, right? So that is what we currently deal with. A circular economy, what that does, what that says, and what we are moving towards in Trinidad and also parts of the Caribbean have had no choice but to move towards, is a situation where before it goes to the landfill, right? It goes into a facility where we no longer call it a garbage. It is called recyclable material, right? It is sorted. It goes into waste streams, and it goes back into a production line to form the basis or the inputs for something else. So, for example, tires is a good example, right? Tires. One tire, you can get the crumb rubber. There is a market for the crumb. There is a market for the wire. The wire, I understand there's also a market for the cloth lining inside it, right? So again, that is what we are moving towards on a macro level. Yeah. So what drives that? What now incentivizes me to take my plastics, to take my organics, my food cuttings, and all of those types of things, and take the time to store it or drive in some cases to a collection point and put it there. Well, you have to have again, what one feeds it. One, it helps to reduce overall cost of production within your territory, right? It helps to create entrepreneurship. So there is direct investments where you have the scale for it. There are, in Canada, we have done studies. We have looked at, different territories around the world recently, in looking at how territories have developed or implemented circular or facilitated, I should say, circular economies that significantly brought down their garbage waste disposal bill, which again is millions. Right? In Trinidad, we spend our budget, our landfill budget is upwards of $100 million a year. Right? Garbage collection budget for the state is upwards of, I think it's 200 million a year just to collect the garbage and another 100+ million to bury it, right? To dispose of it. That's the kind of money we're talking about, right? And so by implementing a system like that, you significantly reduce that cost, and that money could now be redistributed towards education. It could now be redistributed towards healthcare, reducing your healthcare costs, fixing your roads, and that type of thing. So that is how we need to look at it. But one of the things I think Aisha started when she was speaking about it, I think you were treating it. It needs to be said. These things aren't cheap, especially now. There isn't scale for it. Especially, if you talk about building a green building, a building management system is millions of dollars, right? And the return, Aisha said it, the return on it, even for your home, switching out LEDs, you building a new house now, they tell you, well, you know what, buy LEDs, pay the extra money for the LEDs. That is at least 10% more. I think it's 20% more on your upfront cost for bulbs, right? And you're going to get that return over what, 10, 15 years? That is a hard sell for anybody in a boardroom who is measuring themselves by quarters. So these are some real things that we have to look at that also drives the linear culture, the linear consumption culture that we have now, and some of the barriers to entry in terms of switching over. You have long payment period, long periods for large investment, long payback period. Yeah, and then there is a catch-22, at least in the short run. There is a catch-22 because if we have to implement, let's just say, a system right now, that system will require, so for example, we talk about tires, right? If you have to develop a system around tires or to treat with tires, it means that you need to have a feedstock, right? You need to ensure, if you're going to get into a business with that, or you want to encourage persons to invest in that, then you need to, first thing first, you need to ensure them constant supply of quality feedstock. That goes for plastics, that goes for any waste stream, right? So thereby, just by doing that, it means for it to be viable in the long run, if an investor needs to go to a bank, right, to get a loan, he needs to show that he can be in business for a period of time where the bank could at least make back their money. And then for him to make some kind of reasonable return on it personally. The question is, does he have the feedstock over time to do that? No, it means that where the catch-22 comes in is that the same system, all of these wonderful things we're talking about is dependent on a linear society. It's dependent on consumption, right? So, but then Aisha spoke about the 4 R's. You can't just recycle is one thing, right? But that does not solve your problem. you have to look at all four. So that's on one end. The other end of it is you got to look at the market dynamics. And again, I'm going to wind down the market dynamic. The market dynamics for recyclable markets tend to be very volatile, right? So for example, if you look on the scale now, first of example, plastics. Let's just say plastics. Plastics see a slump almost every five years, right? You have to build that in every 5 years. So, and only that, plastic sale on the international market is hinged against oil prices, right? Similar with tire crumb, right? Tire crumb is hinged on oil price. If the oil price goes up, demand for if tire crumb goes up, what happens is people drive less, so you have less tire available. So the price of tire crumb, the supply of tire crumb drops, demand goes up. So those are some of the dynamics that happen. Vice versa, if oil price is low, people drive more, then you have a glut on the market for tire crumb. And it works the same way for plastics. Again, that's a petroleum-based product, right? When the price of oil is low, there is less demand there's more demand for virgin plastics. Persons recycle less, they need less, plastic material for their products, and those things are extremely volatile depending on what area you're trading in. So you have to factor those things into your business model. You have to have global supply networks, global chains, and that type of thing. So again, it is not a simple thing. I know people listen to sort of leave the conversation thinking, oh, well, you know what, we're just gonna do this one thing, it's gonna be great. No, it's not just like that. It is what we call, you need to have an integrated waste management plan, right? So if you're just looking at the business side of it, you're not really fixing the problem per se. You may get some cost savings in the short run in terms of your reduced landfill burial cost, which is a plus. But then remember, on the market, you will get a glut and you're going to have problems. So you're just delaying the problem. Essentially, you need to look at the 4 R's: reduce, reuse, refuse, and recycle.
Thank you, Wesley. And you triggered something in my mind too, which is the power of connection. The power of connection. And we can't do the circular economy. We can't contribute as much as we'd like to without understanding the power of connection. We alone can't do it, and we need organizations. We need each other. It's a whole integrated, as you said, management plan, which I do believe very, very much. It's a very, very important point you made there. To contribute to the circular economy by just not looking things in isolation. And if we do that, and everybody does it in their little silos, we go nowhere. We go nowhere. So I do agree with you. The power of connections is very, very important. And it brings up another point that I just wanted to share. When we throw away things, everybody, we dispose, because as you say, that's how we are, the consumerism, we dispose and we buy again. But of course, things will change. Things are changing. However, why do we dispose of something? For instance, with the ACs, right? The air conditioning units, we dispose of it after a period of time. Of course, we dispose of it because we are not understanding the value of every single part of that and how probably we can take apart and then, of course, make something out of it. So I think, again, part of the conversation, and that's why I wanted to bring forward the power of connection and training, right? And yes, you mentioned the integrated plan, but people don't understand. We do not understand how could we contribute to it. Are we just disposing of the AC units? Are we disposing of the bulbs? Or do we understand the value of every single piece of that goes into making that product that we can then probably recycle, and different organizations come on board, different companies, public sector, private sector get on board, and we start new businesses from that. So the power of connection, as you said, we have to have a proper training plan, a proper training system that persons understand the circular economy and the benefits it will be for them. So in a simple thing now, like AC units, we have to contribute a lot more into what are the different parts of the AC unit and what we can save and how we can reuse it. So again, it's an integrated plan, and people don't know it unless we train them, unless we converse. And this is what we're doing. We're really having, we are contributing to knowledge sharing in all these different areas. And we can only improve, start new businesses. Many people will come and I hear all the time, well, I want to go into a new business, but I don't know what to get involved in, right? So if we share these things with you, we share these things that, yes, we can start a business from this, but as you said, we may do it on a small scale. So we have to look at becoming innovation. Everybody who loves to use the word innovation now, right? But are we really innovative people, right? That's a whole different talk by itself. Are we really innovative people? What can make us now contribute to the circular economy if we understand the value of the product that we are producing, that is produced for us, that is produced and manufactured for us, and the different parts of it, and how we could probably reuse certain aspects of it. So training is very, very important. And I wanted to mention the word upskilling. Many persons, this is what we have to do more of. We have to learn about upskilling, and this conversation really contributing to that upskilling and how we could probably form new businesses. But as you mentioned also to Wesley, we may be doing it in small scale. You mentioned tires, right? Do we have the market for these things? Could we have the quantities that can supply us? So if people know, different sectors get involved, and we go forward. It is not we alone cannot do it, right? It's a whole power of connection, as we say, the power of connection. So excellent. Stakeholders, everybody got to understand, how do we share the value of the product that is produced? And if we understand that, then, as you said, we may be able to change. We may be able to change mindset and become different types of businesses. So this is really bringing forward into the next conversation that we're going to have with Aisha. The next point, really, what are some downstream industries? What are some downstream industries as a result of waste management? And this is, we're doing knowledge sharing. We want people to get very excited about the thing that, yeah, let's come to SwimCall, let's come to you, let's see how we could move forward with some ideas. Yes, Aisha? Yeah. So in terms of some of the downstream industries.
Yeah, I'm here. Right. And just to go forward on the change in culture and the connections. And as Wesley rightfully said, these downstream industries that we're going to discuss just now would have a high investment cost, but we have to look at it on a grand scale, because when you integrate the whole waste management system, while you will have a high investment cost on one end, you are going to get a reduction in what goes into the landfill and save on the landfill budget and the collection budget on the other end. So yeah, it is very circular, right? Some of the main downstream industries, which is the same with waste, is for tires. As he rightfully said, there are different processes that the tires can go through to create aggregate for roads, to create cement, right? It goes through the kilns for cement. Pyrolysis, which it creates fuel, rubber tire fuel. There are so many downstream industries for the tire. One of the major things that you just have to look at is where we want to go as a nation, and basically what are some of the upfront investment costs and what we can get it on, and ensure that we have enough of the product to continue on the cycle, right? Beverage container. I know one of the things that is always talked about in Trinidad, and hopefully is coming on stream, is the legislation where you basically will get back a refund on every beverage container purchase, every beverage container brought in, for recycling. Beverage containers can be used for other stuff. Some of the downstream industries of beverage containers making different plastic products, or remaking new beverage containers, right? Aluminum, I was looking at a video and reading up on aluminum recycling the other day. And in some processes for aluminum recycling, you can have a new aluminum can within 3 months of discarding the old can, which is kind of, amazing. So that could be a constant circular process to keep recycling and stuff, using new resources, right? Paper, one of the downstream industries for paper is, just more paper essentially. So different types of paper. So you constantly have to recycle. And once you take these things, or you have downstream industries for these things, it takes away from putting it into the landfill, which of course reduces the footprint, reduces the monies required to run these landfills. As Wesley rightly said, it's millions of dollars. Simple budget is within the hundreds of billions, about 100 million to run the landfill. But a reduction and ensuring that we have these downstream economies for all these recyclable for waste can reduce that in the end and create tangible evidence and tangible things so that you can use later on, and just essentially making the earth a safer and less pollution, and making the earth a safer and more green place, right? Niche markets is another downstream economy. If you have niche markets for certain aspects of it, while it may not have while it might have too much product for these niche markets, different niche markets for the various items of waste can create a big downstream economy. Shoes, different pavers for plastics, etc. Those are small, smaller items that can be used to as a big investment, but as a big, a downstream economy for later on, which does decrease the amount of waste going into landfill. So as he said, it's a whole integrated waste management system. What basically reducing, the recycling, the downstream economies for the recycling, and then the final disposal at the end of it.
Thank you, Aisha. This is a question that came from the audience, from Kevin, yeah? What factors can the facilities manager or property manager take into consideration when making a decision to implement a building management system with a building that is fairly old? And I know we speak about this all the time, Wesley and Aisha, building management systems. And can we implement it in an old building? What are some of the factors that we may have to consider in doing something like that? Because, it's part of the, as you said, the going green concept, the building management systems. Yeah. So Wesley or Aisha, you want to take that one? What are some of the factors?
Well, I could start. Just immediately, what would come to mind? We talk about an old building. So I think first, I'm just thinking just the whole cost of implementing something like that. So you will have to look at well, what is your return? I mean, what are you seeking to manage? And I think this is where your waste audit will kind of direct you into what are some of your major what is your waste characterization looking like, so give you a lay of the land as it relates to your situation, and then you can now itemize. You have a fair idea as to what's making up your cost profile, and then when you do that. So for example, and I'll give you just an example, by us at Simple, I think we have a relatively aged building. For some weird reason, the building lacks windows, right? That it is built in like that. There are windows to the front, but there are no other windows in this building. So if you have to talk about implementing a management system, right around there, you have to deal with lighting, right? So you're gonna have to sort of weight your management system around, well, how do we deal with lights? Right, because lights have to be on all of them. There is zero opportunity for natural lighting in 90% of the building. Okay, so then the next one, of course, is airflow, right? that windows facilitate natural air, general airflow, things like that. So again, for us in our building, that is a relatively old building, those things we would have to start building a system around that, costing that out. And then of course you would get into, I mean, I don't know how old the building is. Shivani, you would know when dealing with old buildings, you start interfering with them, right?
You're saying I in old buildings, Wesley?
I'm just saying, UE is an old organization, but I mean, I say, right? So you have to sort of factor in, get a sense as to what is your appetite for spend, what benefits or returns can implementing, a management system. And I'm thinking here, and I'm assuming here, some sort of IT-based thing, some remote-based type of system we're talking about to remotely do something. You have to ask yourself, what is my rate of return on this? If I implement this thing, what is my payback period? Does this make sense in the long run? Or should we simply break the building down and build one back that is, fit for purpose? I think, those are some of the decisions that if as a facilities manager, when preparing your documentation or when considering it, these are some of the things at the end of the day you're going to have to consider. These are some of the questions you're going to have to answer when you take it to your stakeholders, because they're going to want to know, does this thing make sense to do at all, right? And one of these, again, just to kind of tie it back in, you need to look at your waste profile. You need to know where you're spending most of your money on, and what are the systems or the options in treating with it, and you sort of drill it back to what are the then you can do the analysis, the cost benefit analysis surrounding that. But I think simple things tend to win. Start with a simple process. You need to get people on board. People need to just get used to the whole idea of reducing, reusing, and that type of thing. And I think once you start with programs surrounding with that, that would help you in your conversation or bringing people on board to assist with the whole idea of how should we now approach this whole issue of a building management system for this very old building.
And definitely to build on it too. Yes, Aisha, what you were saying, yeah, with the building management system.
Agreed. I mean, you have to, as you said, you do the waste audit and you break it down. So you don't have to go this grand affair of trying to get everything to be as lean and green as possible. But if you can break it down into your different aspects of waste, electricity, water, and look at the cost benefit analysis of each item and then determine which one is the best ones that can suit you, I think that's some of the factors that you can look at in making greening an old building. Right, so I do agree with that whole system of how I would do it.
Thank you. And to build on that too, as both of you are saying, the building management systems in an old building, a lot of work. You have to do business proposals, right? Does it make sense? Does it make sense to spend this amount of money? And as you said, Wesley, you go into the C-suite now, and you come into the C-suite and you say, okay, well, give me this amount of money for a building management system. It might be a hard spend, right? So how do we do it? Do we present business cases, justify, and everybody wants to look at it in terms of dollars and cents? What is the payback period? What about the net present value, internal rate of return? All these good stuff, right? Money stuff. And that's just what it is. Nobody is going to give us the money for this unless it makes sense in terms of a life cycle costing, probably over a period of time. So does it make sense to do a building management system? One might say, okay, well then, and we may not need people to physically be there in the building to go and turn off lights. Probably then you may have a leaner operation then with your maintenance management professionals, because the building management system could be managed with a few persons. with occupants. So there are many factors, as you said, that will go into a building management system and how it really contributes to the circular economy. Yes, it does. However, it's a cost involved. And how do we present it? How do we justify it, right? How do we justify something like that? But this is coming into the other question. Many times we want to do projects like this. And I always have this conversation with my colleagues and my boss all the time, right? We want to do these projects all the time. So we speak about a recycling project. We speak about, okay, let's get people to go and change the culture, and we're going to turn off the lights now. We're going to turn off the lights, right? So we change in, we come about with all these different initiatives, these different projects. But what about the continue? Because this is something that I think is lacking in a lot of organizations. And it has to be, we have to have this in the conversation. How are we going to now change something like this? We may do a project now, right? What about the continuity of that? Down the road, we're doing everything in isolation. Everything is not tying into something. So I'm really coming about with the point of having policies. What are some of the policies required for waste management? Just last night in the class, we were speaking about it, Wesley, in terms of you want to talk about sustainability, right? And this is part of the conversation, sustainability and, zero waste and good for the family and good for generations and generations to come. But we are implementing projects one by one. Nothing is coordinated, or we just come about with an idea and we run with it. However, it's not tying into any policies, so things will not be able to continue. So we may come about with these recycling approaches, what you said, Aisha, reuse and reduce and all these lovely words that we keep talking. And I do agree, it's wonderful words, wonderful parts of the talk. But is it enough? It's probably a bottom-up approach, and we need to tie it in with a top-down approach. Bottom-up thinking, bottom-up approach, and a top-down approach. So what do we say? Everything is an integrated system. It's an integrated system. We cannot just have one project and yes, right, good. Wesley, we come and we implemented a recycling project and yes, it worked. What about next year? What about it? It has to continue. We are doing things too much in silos, and both of you all are contributing so much to the power of connection. When people comprehend a system properly, but what is the term? I say the sum is greater than its parts. The sum is greater than its parts. Yeah, I know that's a favorite word of yours too. The sum is greater than its parts. So this is what I want you to really contribute to this, the policies. And I know you are a policy man, Wesley. You are definitely a policy man, right? So what policies will be required for waste management to be successful?
So, thanks, Shivani. Of course, no one needs to get too granular with it. I try to take it at a kind of high level, right? So you need to look at, I think, a safe way to look at it or to approach it from a policy perspective, and also taking into consideration what you said about sustaining these initiatives, and looking at the long-term impact, and building something today that can be relevant and sustained well into the future. I think certainly when you talk about policies, you talk about governments, right? That could be a complex thing, but I'll just stick straight to policy. What you need to look at, one, and I'm looking straight, one, you need to look at the 4 R's. You need to look at the policies designed to reduce consumption, policies designed to incentivize reuse, policies, again, to encourage persons to refuse certain types of products, all right, and policies designed to encourage recycling. Now, those things that's not just one policy we're talking about. Those are a suite or a package of policies for each one. So inside there, and I can speak to what we are doing in Trinidad. So for example, we are pursuing recycling, right? At the core of it, our policy prescription, I believe, I stand to be corrected, is really to geared towards recycling. Recycling basically taking a product and breaking it down into some base components and reusing it refashioning it into a totally different component that is different from reuse. All right. So what we need to do and what we are doing, again, you see this a lot of the Caribbean as well, is you would see policies designed to incentivize collection, because as I said before, you need to have a constant feedstock. That may take the form of a deposit refund system. That may take the form, of something around, deposit refund systems are the most common, similar to what I think Carib Glass does or has been doing over the years and that type of thing. You bring in your refuse, bring in your tire, bring in your glass, you get a 25 cents, you get $2, right? As a deposit refund system, you have tax-based systems. There are different prescriptions that territories have used. We in the Caribbean, governments in the Caribbean tend to favor incentive prescriptions or policies designed around deposit refund. All right. Then you need to but that is in the upstream. You also need to have policies incentivizing the financing or the downstream side of the market, right? Banks, lending institutions, they need to now be incentivized to lend to entrepreneurs, right? So you need to, and in so doing, you need to create a climate or an atmosphere for the investor, for them to put money into it, to allow for persons, to allow for the processing to happen, right? Because the value chain speaks to, you have to have your collectors, right? That may take the form of redemption depots and that type of thing, right? Then, so that is one part of the value chain. And then you have the other part, which is the processing, right? So the product either needs to be broken down, it has to be baled, it has to be broken down into flakes, shred with its tires, that type of thing, right? That is the other part of the value chain. And then, so that's the processing part. And then you have the distribution part of the value chain, right? So you have to, all of these things need to be incentivized. All right, all of these things require a large amount of capital. They require risk. So therefore, the insurance companies need to give these fellas a reason to get involved, to buy up some of that risk. So you need to have policies and this is just for recycling, right? So again, you need to have a package or a suite of policies that are uniquely designed for the territory, that are designed, that take into consideration the prevailing culture and attitude of the territory, all right? And your particular prescription. For example, we are looking to create entrepreneurs. That is one way that the state is looking to do that by this particular prescription, and they have a suite of policies to enable that. I heard listened to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about some of these countries in Europe that have implemented policies to incentivize refuse and also the reduced component of the recycling framework, of the waste management framework, right? So for example, if you're a manufacturer operating and you want to build or operate a plant, you cannot or you want to bring something in as a trader, you have to show the state that issues of plant obsolescence. So you can't bring in a car that as soon as the alternator goes bad, you have to abandon or dispose of the whole car because the cost to repair the alternator is so high, right? And it's only going to, or you have, for example, with some phones and some electronics, where you have built-in or planned obsolescence, right? Where it is designed to go bad after 2 years or 3 years or something like that. So that is built in. Countries in Europe have actually are actually right now putting policies in place at the government level, right, the state level, to ensure that these things don't happen. You as a trader or a manufacturer entrepreneur, you need to show that, listen, my product, as something you were speaking of earlier, right? My product can be repaired, right? And you can source parts, and it is reasonable to do so. So once you buy that washing machine, I find it unfortunate that there are some luxury goods out here that I want to own, but I can't see myself buying one. You should be familiar, Shivani, right? I admire some stuff, some stuff you have. You should be aware of this, that you buy one, and as soon as a part go bad, you're crying, right? Something wrong with that, right? And what these countries are saying is that they are not allowing that, right? You don't even bring it, don't even bill it, right? Unless you can show them that the cost to maintain it is a reasonable cost over extended period of time, right? I'm not sure if you could, how that is Europe. I'm not sure if that would fly in this side of the world. So again, the culture plays a role in that, because again, you reduce demand. Those things reduce demand over time, and persons' jobs are hinged on these things, right? So and you have a whole infrastructure that is built on consumption. So again, these things, require a lot to happen. And again, policies are driven by culture, and policies are driven by governments. Governments are informed by the voters, what the voters want. So essentially,
So
you
we
have
were
to sort of.
discussing policies, Wesley. Thanks so much for this real interesting part. And it brings so many things in my head right now. We do projects for waste management, yes, within our industry and our environment. We have to have organizational policies within the organization for something like this. Then we have to have what government and society and world policies for this. So definitely power of connection. And we cannot operate in a silo, because, and in all industries, this is got to change, cultures, everything like that, change management. How do we change? And how do we contribute to something like this? So thank you so much for that. Aisha, are there any special projects that SwimCall is working on? Are there any special projects that SwimCall is working on?
Yes, so I think these last, I would say, few years, SwimCall has been going through a huge transformation. And it's a good thing. I'm actually very excited as to say, to show where we're going. A few years ago, we started the curbside recycling project, which was going through different municipal corporations and trying to get certain areas in those municipal corporations to encourage recycling. So 1 or 2 days of the week for pickup, and it comes into our facility where we would process the recyclables, right? Mainly beverage containers, but any recyclables to that effect, right? Also, but so that what we're also looking at is SwimCall, as you say, the same thing, an integrated waste management system. So, recyclables in your waste, right? We've started, we do it on a small scale, but within the next few months, I think we can definitely get it into a larger, we are moving to get it into a much more larger scale. Some of the policies, of course, that we have been writing policies over the last maybe 2 years, and these policies will now manifest itself into some of the what the government or where we are looking to go as a country, which is into incentivizing most of the waste. So, beverage container refund systems, tires. So, a downstream, creating some kind of industry of facilitating the downstream industry for tires, compost, fecal, and stuff. So over the next few years, we shall be getting into these incentivizing or trying to basically take the waste away from just one, landfilling and making it a more circular economy to ensure that everything has its place and everything is reused and reduced, right? And at the last end of the chain is the development of a new landfill, an engineered landfill, which means basically you'll have a new engineered sanitary landfill for municipal solid waste and for some aspects of special waste, which, proper leachate collection, proper gas management, it will reduce pollution, and once you take most of the waste out with the MRFs and all these programs that SwimCall is looking at, it will of course make less footprint on the environment in terms of the landfill part of it, right?
Right. Thank you very much for that. So, Wesley, I know you'll also want to share some of the special projects that SwimCall is working on.
Yeah, well, I think Aisha sort of covered some of the big things. So in a broad perspective, the engineered landfill. But what I would want to do is sort of tie it in. Is not, sometimes we think of these things, we hear of them in silos, but it's all designed. It's all, again, what we are working towards is that integrated waste management system. So she spoke of the curbside. Curbside recycling project is designed to create, it's designed to do two things that we have been talking about all night. It's designed to create behavior change or facilitate behavior change among the citizen, right? And it's also designed, the practical purpose is to create a system for a sustained feedstock, right? That would now go into the next thing Aisha spoke about, which is when you talk about engineered landfill, the engineered landfill is the back end, right? Before that, it speaks to an MRF, right? Or some sort of MRF. MRF is a material recovery facility, all right? You have dirty ones and you have clean ones. So the curbside recycling, and then we have curbside recycling for municipal corporations. We have the workplace recycling program, which is a recycling program for the private sector. We have a similar recycling program that we do for the public sector. Again, to do the same thing, shore up the collection side of things and to facilitate behavior change. All of these things comes into a MRF. We have MRF, so to speak. We're totally filling it out at the NAMDA of our NAMDEFCO facility at CLOTS, right? What happens at the MRF? Sorting happens, right? It is the material is sorted in its various waste category or waste stream, and then goes down for processing, right? We currently have some of that to start small scale happening. So what Aisha is talking about, yes, the engineered landfill for the existing landfill, right? That has to be done, but we're also working on the front end of it. We're working on setting up MRFs, redemption depots, transfer stations to facilitate that. All of those things will be coming in the near future. And then from the downstream perspective, right, after they are processed, we're also looking at rolling out in various ways, those decisions are still to be taken. How it to be done? How do we now engage the market, right? We are currently dealing with two waste streams. So we're dealing with plastics. We're currently dealing with plastics. We'll be dealing with plastics and tires first, right? And from next year and in next 2 years, we'll be bringing on fecal sludge, right? That's starting to treat with the beast, as the technical people tell me, of organics. We'll be dealing with fecal sludge, and then you will hear more. We'll be treating with e-waste, and then the oils and the fats thereafter. All right, and of course, so right now we're treating with paper. We'll be treating with plastics, we'll be treating with tires, all right? And from next year, in the next 2 years, you'll be hearing more about fecal sludge, and so on. There is also, you will hear about, which as it relates to the landfill, again, downstream, about gas to energy. Those things, Ministry of Energy are looking at the feasibility of that. And those things tie into the engineered landfill that Aisha was speaking about. But again, another organization is treating with that. SWIMCAL, we are moving forward, as I said, with that package of programs, of projects in a program to facilitate an integrated waste management system in the country, from collection, from behavior, one, to ideally to help people, educate persons so they could reduce, reuse, recycle, and then to dovetail that into a structured system for collection and processing, and then recycling via the international or local markets.
Thank you, Wesley. Just a couple points from the audience here. Biodegradable products to serve foods should be integrated. All right, anything you all would like to share with that, Aisha? Biodegradable products to serve foods should be integrated.
Yes, agreed. I believe we have started phasing out especially styrofoam. You're right. I believe that's one of the government's policies right now. So agreed. I think we should be looking at biodegradable products, period, so that we don't have this big footprint of having to treat with these things later down.
Right, and also, will plastics and runoffs be part of this discussion? So I know, Wesley, you discussed a lot with plastics.
Yep.
Right. Also, move the paper production to online so that the footprint can be reduced. That was a point again. Move the paper production to online so that the footprint can be reduced. And I'm sure, Wesley, you and Aisha and myself totally agree with that, and really looking to see if it could be done. I myself, I work in organizations where we use a lot of paper, and just with the lockdown, so to speak, we save so much with the use of paper. So definitely we can contribute to the circular economy with just that one aspect, just one aspect of reducing the consumption of paper. So I wish to thank you, Wesley and Aisha, for being part of this conversation on circular economies. Questions were coming in, and definitely we would like to continue this conversation in some upcoming webinars on the digital transformation, circular economies. So definitely we would continue part 2 then of this conversation with the circular economies. We can't stop here. There's always much more to share on the circular economy, how we can really contribute to something like this. But as we close, I want everybody to, some of the takeaways from this conversation is it a cultural shift? What about policies, how policies is going to affect us? And also training. And, that's probably a pet peeve of mine, training and development of people and ensuring that persons understand the impact of it, where you can then contribute to a lot of different industries, just by understanding the product and understanding the value of it, understanding the value. So policy development, a very important part of the conversation, training and development, and of course, Wesley and Aisha, the power of conversation, the power of connection, that is, the power of connection. We cannot operate in a silo. We cannot operate in a silo. And yes, in our organizations, different parts of the organization, maybe implementing recycling projects and reducing and reusing. But once again, it is the entire organization, it is the entire country, it is the entire region, as you said, Wesley, and of course, it's the entire world. So yes, it starts with us, but how could we up it then? How could we increase the scale and increase the capacity that we can see a change where we can move from linear to circular? Of course, coming in from a property and maintenance management aspect, but of many other things, part of the conversation. So in closing, everybody, Wesley, Aisha, you all are contributing so much to my 3 favorite words, huh? Well, I have many favorite words, but probably I'll close with the 3 favorite words, which is learn, unlearn, and relearn. Learn, unlearn, and relearn. I look forward for continuing this webinar series on digital transformation in the upcoming weeks. Thanks again, everybody, and thanks to you, the audience, for asking so much relevant questions. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.